Hello, and thanks for joining us today for today's webinar from the Institute for Research on Poverty at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I'm Natea Taylor, and I'll be your host. Our webinar today is on fathers, supporting fathers. We have 5 presenters who will discuss father-to-father programs and resources that create space for fathers to find the support they need. First, we'll hear from Dr. Tova Walsh, who is an associate professor in the Sandra Rosenbaum School of Social Work at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and she's also an IRP affiliate. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Daryl Davidson. He is the director of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Coalition and the City of Milwaukee Community Engagement and Achievement Collaboratives. Then we'll hear from Dr. Alan Michael Graves. He is the Senior Director of Teaching and Capacity Building at the Good Plus Foundation. After that, we'll hear from Eugene Chrysler. He is a fatherhood program facilitator at the Urban League of Greater Madison. Our last speaker will be Joshua Zawadi. He is the owner and founder of Melanated Daddy and a Dad Doula. Thank you all for being here again. This webinar is co-produced with the Wisconsin Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Board and supported in part by funding from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Office of the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation. But views expressed by our speakers don't necessarily represent the opinions or policies of that office or any other sponsor, including the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We have an hour today, and after we hear from each of our presenters, we'll spend the last 10 minutes or so at the end for a live Q&A. You can type your questions in the Q&A box. We did get some questions submitted as people registered, so we will be queuing some of those up as well. Also, feel free to participate through the chat. We love to know who you are and where you're joining us from. And I want to let you know that we also have closed captions enabled, so you can toggle those on and off at the bottom of your screen. And we'll be posting the slides and the recording of the webinar within a day or so, and you'll receive a link to those by email. So with that, again, thank you for being here, and we'll get started with Professor Walsh.
Thank you so much, Natea, and thank you to everyone joining us. I am seeing in the chat just folks joining from all over the country in so many different roles, and it's really exciting to have you with us. So we are actually going to do this webinar a little bit differently. We're not just going to be presenting one at a time, but we're going to have a discussion among our panelists. And I'm really excited to have 4 terrific presenters with me and looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have. So I'll mention just before we get started, this is one in a series of webinars sponsored by IRP and the Prevention Board, and maybe one of my colleagues at IRP can put in a chat the link where you can check out other webinars if you're interested to do so. Today our focus is fathers supporting fathers, and I want to just set the stage for this conversation a little bit by saying that for parents as a whole, the availability of social support, people to connect with who can understand and empathize with your situation, who can share information, resources, emotional support, people who get it, is such an important resource. And today we're focusing specifically on fathers. And I want to call attention to the fact that in the research, there's relatively little attention to the impact of fathers having peer support and access to connections with other fathers who have been in their shoes and who understand and can relate in that way. We are lucky to have 4 presenters who are terrific fathers and fatherhood advocates and who have a lot of experience with programs in which fathers provide support to other fathers. And so I am excited to kind of hear from them about the work that they do. I'll just name briefly that in the work that I do, where I've talked with dads about the kind of support that they want to receive from other fathers, one of the things that has come up, particularly in my work with Shauna Lee from Michigan, is just hearing how very, very different it is as compared to hearing from a professional, as compared to hearing from some kind of Dr. So-and-so about, with any kind of advice, just what it means to hear from somebody who really gets it, who has been through the same thing, who maybe isn't just giving you advice, but is saying, here's something I tried that didn't work, as well as here's something I tried that then went better. So I am just really grateful that we have 4 folks with us who are going to tell us about their work and share some of the ways that they work with dads to provide one another with support, share experiences, help dads feel less alone, and get connected to resources that they might need. So we're going to start with introductions from the panel, move into some questions and discussion. And I'm going to ask Dr. Graves, Alan Michael, if you would start us off, please, by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about how you came to the work that you do.
Sure. Good morning. I'm coming in from the West Coast, but good afternoon for those in other spaces. I am Dr. Alan Michael Graves with the Good Plus Foundation. And as indicated, I am the Senior Director of Teaching and Capacity Building. And it's kind of a dual role for me. I am part of an organization that supports goods and services, tangible goods and services to organizations and systems across the country, based out of New York, but I'm housed in Los Angeles. And we work with those programs, I think, through a different lens, right? We provide those tangible goods, but we also provide services on doing some of the things that you just talked about, Tova. I personally lead our fatherhood efforts and training organizations and systems to engage fathers in the way that we talk about, and through that peer-to-peer model. Not negating any of the evidence-based programs that are out there, but some of them don't match the populations that we work with. And so we couple the work that we do and the capacity building that we do with organizations to meet families where they are. We're really focused on low income and families in poverty, and really trying to create a different trajectory for those families through working with the community-based organizations that they're with. I personally also facilitate parenting classes, anger management, domestic violence, all those things that show up in father-to-father engagement, and really happy to be here to talk about some of the things that we see in the work, not only from a capacity building, but from my lens in facilitating the work that we do. So thank you for the invitation. Glad to be part of this conversation.
Thank you so much. Daryl, would you go next and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work that you do?
Absolutely. And good afternoon and good morning to everyone who is participating. I'm Daryl Davidson. I'm with the Milwaukee Fatherhood Coalition, which is associated with the City of Milwaukee Office of Administration. We are the connecting glue of many of the fatherhood organizations that are happening within our area, Milwaukee County, and ultimately we are trying to expand our reach and influence into our region. What we do is we not only are providing direct services as well as course education, so that includes individual as well as group educational activity, but we also function in the capacity as technical assistants, operators, and we also are the ones who host and convene the annual Milwaukee Fatherhood Summit, which is a one-stop shop that takes place generally in October. It brings many of the services that are affiliated with the fatherhood serving organizations and those ancillary services such as employment, driver's license recovery, child support, those topics where people want to learn about child development and screenings. We support those activities throughout the year, but we also make sure to make a concerted effort to get individuals on the same page regarding keeping families strong. That's our mission. We want to make sure that the fathers have a working relationship with the mothers. They can be fathers and mothers who are in the same household or not in the same household. They can be fathers who may have started off not with a great working relationship and maybe not even a relationship with the children, but want a relationship with the children. We are there for them, and we also give strength-based activities so that they will be involved in being a part of those children's lives, even if they don't start off there. Other activities that we're involved in is identifying curricula for organizations that say that they want to promote working with fathers, and that may not be their initial focus. So we will work with them, go through curricula that might be identified through Father Resource and Father Source from the National Fatherhood Initiative website, as well as get them to be in contact with organizations that work with us. Our local dad project, which is direct assistance to dads, which goes through the Milwaukee Health Department, is specifically working with prenatal fathers as well as fathers of infants up to 3 years old. We are trying to be there for every part of the father's lifespan. And so I want to talk about not only those, but the resources, and if we get the opportunity, answer some questions that people might think are insurmountable, but there's a way.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn to Eugene next. If you would introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning. And again, as Tova said, I'm Eugene. I am the facilitator for the Urban League of Greater Madison. I'm actually, I would say that I am a participant turned facilitator. I once was in the Urban League and participated in the fatherhood group, and worked my way up to those challenges. What I do specifically in my role is that I work with the county to help individuals who are not paying child support, work with them to get them employment and services that they need to be able to have a gainful life with employment and relationships with their children, and obviously communicating with the children's other parent, mother or father. And so my goal is to make sure that I give the information and give the tools that are needed for fathers and those who come across that I come across to be able to attain those goals, and give them support and give them hope. As my lived experience as a father and going through the processes of the court system, I really feel like my lived experience is what I use to connect with the fathers and make sure, and non-custodial parents, to make sure that they are being helped, in short.
Thank you, Eugene. And Josh, if you can go next and introduce yourself, please.
How y'all doing? My name is Josh. I am a father, first and foremost, right? And then a father who became a father because of being a husband, meaning my wife and my children had to correct the process, right? And then from there went into Melanated Daddy, my fatherhood platform, just spotlighting everything fatherhood related, everything from bonus dads to biological fatherhood, the whims and the issues of both. And then through that had my fourth child, and she was the birth of dad doula. So I'm a full spectrum holistic doula, trained and certified. And I decided, instead of doing doula work for women, my calling is to help men navigate birth and non-birthing people and birthing people navigate birth, right? So we have a course that we teach, we build community, we usher parents through this process, building birth plans, learning how to advocate, and learning that it's simply my duty as a non-birthing parent, regardless of our relationship, to ensure that child and that mother are successfully born. So that is who I am. That is what I do. And I am very much geeking out in this moment, y'all. I watched this last year. So I'm trying to keep it together because I'm like losing it. But regardless, that's me. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much to all four of you for being here. And here we go. We're going to launch in. We met in advance and talked about some topics we wanted to be sure to cover today. And the first one, where we're going to get started, is talking a little bit about how each of our panelists' approach is establishing rapport and trust with fathers to be able to provide support and facilitate the exchange of support among fathers when you're working with groups of fathers. So I'm going to ask Josh, we'll stay with you for a minute. If you want to kick us off with that, in your dad doula classes, when you bring a group together that's meeting for the first time, how do you get started with establishing trust and rapport?
I love this question. I think when it comes to building a rapport and establishing connection, right? I have to lead with who I am first. I go by a statement that says, I cannot call a space brave unless I'm brave myself first. And so I lead with my testimony of who I am. I wasn't the best dad. I made the mistakes. And I lead with who I am in hopes that they can not see me as a facilitator who is just here to teach and I'm perfect, but somebody who's learned through my mistakes so that I can show up for them differently and so they can do their own work in their families that they've created. So that's how I foster a community.
And Eugene, I think that echoes a little bit of what you said in introducing yourself too, about bringing your own experience into your work with fathers, and that's part of what drives you in moving from being a participant into the role that you're in now as a facilitator.
Exactly. I feel like, if just like Joshua has said, right, if we don't have ourselves be vulnerable, then how can others be vulnerable for you? And just having that space where they can have that. So the introduction that I have is just what is my own experiences, but also what's expected from me and what I'm expected to get from them, just so that we have those lines of communications and we draw that line and we have that open line of communication. I leave the door open for any of my fathers or non-custodial parents to come in to speak with me, even small gestures of just, having these intimate conversations one-on-one, closing the door and just kind of letting them express the way they need to express themselves.
Alan Michael, do you have tips for how you get a group to connect and how you establish your own connection with the group?
Yeah, I think it mirrors Josh and Eugene, right? I am a 52-year-old man who still longs for his dad, right? Born from raised with a single mom, but I lead with, I miss my daddy, right? And what that looks like navigating life as a man of color today. Most of the families that I work with, because I work with both mothers and children, and even those that we provide the training with, everybody knows my story, right? I've worked in institutions where they talk about self-disclosure and make it about the client and it doesn't work, right? Everybody knows my kids by name. I tell my challenges. I express my frustration, even as Dr. Graves navigating life as a parent. I show up who I am, a father of now 4. I just acquired, and I say acquired, but welcomed into our family a little girl because I was a dad of 3 for a long time. And I talk about that experience and what that looks like, and people resonate with that, right? So I don't think that this work can be done without trust and rapport. So I'm glad that you asked the question. It's key and essential, and it requires a little self-disclosure, right? So for me, I come in as Alan Michael and not Dr. Graves. Because as you said in the intro, Tova, those doctors that come in and talked down and talk to, that doesn't really work on the ground, right? And so I lead by example with the challenges that come up in my parenting and allow a space for individuals to navigate that space. As I facilitate training with train-to-trainers who are doing this work, I do the same thing with them. So if these gentlemen, like right now, were training with me, we would model what peer-to-peer support groups look like. And it's been extremely successful. Again, I think trust and rapport is the key to being effective and successful in this fatherhood realm.
Thank you. And Daryl, anything you would like to add on this topic in terms of how you create the space for genuine connections and establish your own connections with fathers?
Absolutely. And I do want to say that I really appreciate what was stated before. And thank you, Alan Michael, for also introducing that section where you are getting personal. That's an important element. Now, one of the things that we try to maintain is that expectant fathers spend their lives not really being the ones who are assumed to take care of a child or that they might have anything to do with infants. So we start off letting them know that if they say that they don't know anything or they believe that there's going to be a huge learning curve, that's completely understandable. So we're not in the business of being judgmental. We want them to actively state from their point of view where they are and what they're comfortable with. When it comes to the facilitation, we still see them as the expert on their own lives. Now, we want them to be engaged, and we want to be an environment where we're informing. We have monthly meetings with fathers. We have our fatherhood classes. We have curricula, and we also have what is known for those on the call who are connected to the Parents as Teachers curriculum, there's group connections with fathers, which is also a peer-to-peer education model where they may even have older fathers or more experienced fathers who are working with the less experienced fathers. The one thing that I do want to talk to people about here, if they don't have the experience of pulling a group together, please do not expect the men to start sharing and supporting immediately, because all groups go through various stages of development. And that happens even with the groups that we see. We bring in individuals and we try to be as welcoming as possible. We create an environment where there's images of fathers that are supporting fathers. We have numbers where there's legal assistance and a range of a menu of services. And we also give other notices and calendar events of other social gatherings. But It's only when those individuals are comfortable calling us by our first names, being able to talk to us, knowing that they are in an environment where we're listening to them and we're not talking at them, that's when we start seeing what we're striving for. So it does take time. And something else I'll add, if you are from an agency that primarily works with women and you want to start off having gatherings with men, you need to promote that very clearly, that these are the men's events or these are the spaces where the men will be. And when you're doing it, versus creating it where it's late on the calendar, try to do it as early on the calendar as you can. So the very start of the year, say that there's a fatherhood session, or we're going to meet with fathers during this time, and then we'll come back around Father's Day. But something to let the fathers know that they are a priority with your organization, if that doesn't seem to be what your agency is doing. And then finally, if you are able, please be sure to identify something or an objective that can show up in your mission statement that clearly states that fathers belong where you work. I think that is extremely important to make your environment one that the fathers will appreciate going to.
Yeah, so these are a lot of great tips for when, in particular, connecting with a new group, you're setting a tone, like you said, centering that, making clear that the work with fathers is a priority. And I think all of you really named how important it is up front to bring yourself into it and let people get to know you as a model for what you hope, the way in which you hope they'll be able to open up to. As you move into the work and as you're, being part of a group, Josh, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to, what kinds of things might cause harm in that group space and how you try to prevent that or address it as it happens.
I loathe the term, this is a safe space. And the reason I loathe that term is because safety is something that is warranted, but not always given. And when you're in spaces where people differ and where emotions can run live and wild, and when a lot of other variables can be seen and shown, it's not safe, because safety can be controlled. That's why I leave a brave space, because I'm going to require you to step out your shell and do something you've never done. So I think the first part is stating up front what the parameters are of what we're trying to do. I need you all to get outside your norms. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be nasty. We're going to make some mistakes, and I'll catch you when you fall, right? Because safety isn't always guaranteed. So I think the first part is getting away from the idea of a safe space and moving into an idea of being radical and brave in this space for maximum growth. I think number two is not so much the Vegas rule, right? What happens here stays here. That doesn't rarely work either, especially if you're married. When I'm in a space, I bring it home. I talk to my wife about it. We talk about it. So that's not always the case. But it's having an understanding that as community members, this is our lived experience. This is our community. These are our norms. And allowing the people in the space to come up with those norms so that what they need is seen, heard, and understood, versus me as a facilitator trying to tell you, oh, this is what we're going to do. No, as a group, I am no bigger than you. I'm no better than you. I'm just here to walk us through this journey. So what are the norms for this space so that everybody can be seen, heard, and understood? And how do I go about, and this is what we're going to do to increase and make sure that everybody feels safe.
Ellen Michael, I see you nodding, so I want to invite you to tag on to that if you're having some thoughts and reactions to what you just heard.
Yeah, I love it, Joshua. And I think that in order to protect or mitigate harm in that space, it requires us to show up different, right? We can't be like every other space, right? We can't be the space when you show up 5 minutes late, we're kicking you out of the class. Right, because we have some compassion about the guy who's working 3 or 4 jobs or caught a bus and 2 trains to get here. Right, that's looking and engaging in a different way to create that brave space. Right, I've been and part of organizations where if a guy comes in and smells like marijuana, oh, you're absolutely out of here. I got to create a space that's different. Right, if I want to help you move from the space that you're in. I got to be able to meet, and we use the cliche throughout the nation, meet them where they are. Oh, it's bigger than just that term, right? I literally have to meet you where you are. And that might mean I might get a little uncomfortable, right? But I have to navigate and be uncomfortable in that space, even as the facilitator, in order to allow those who are part of that group to grow and do different, right? So, Josh, amen to what you said. And I would just add that it means that we have to do things differently, right? We can't be the same as every other program or system that have failed to engage them, but now we're trying to engage them in the same way that was failed. Won't work, right? You see me wiggling my seat, Tova, because that's my mantra, right? We got to do it different.
Yeah, we got to do it differently. And I really like, the thought you just that too. If you've had experiences with systems that haven't engaged you, that's going to shape what you're expecting and kind of braced for when you walk into this space. So doing things differently is so key. I'm wondering, Eugene, if you can talk to us a little bit about, thinking about some of these systemic coming up against, and then they come into your space. How do you think about the meeting fathers where they are and addressing head on some of the ways that systems might have failed them, or that they might be really struggling in their life right now with some of the systems that have a role in their lives?
Yeah, I echo what Joshua and Alan Michael have said. You definitely do have to put yourself in a vulnerable spot, right? As to say like, hey, look, this is a safe space. This is how Joshua used the space. And I like that idea, that analogy, right? It's, it's a brave space, right? Because you have to, it takes it. I'm a martial arts instructor too. So my thing is, I say this, the two hardest belt to achieve in martial arts is the white belt and the black belt. Because it takes courage to walk in to a dojo and be vulnerable. It takes courage. And that's why one of those affirmations of being courage is on the wall, right? And it takes consistency to obtain that black belt. So having them have that safe space, I don't go and say, oh, I'm a black belt, guys. I'm vulnerable just like you guys. I'm a father like you guys. I've been through the system like you all have been, and I have to tell you, we're getting mad and we're using more of our emotions to combat a system, which actually is also triggering how we have our relationship with our children's parent, mother, father. And I always have to say that, they are special, they are important, they have a gift, and they're special to someone. They have a value that they need to believe in themselves, and this is a place to be able to express that, and to also be there when, like Alan Michael said it, like people might come in smelling like weed or drunk. Why would I turn them away? Why would I do that? Because they're coming here for something. And I've noticed it just and I always have to go by my experience of what I've seen. I've seen a father who's come to me crying. He might have been under influence, but he is crying, and he was crying for help. He came in the next day into my group, and there was a struggle. He was struggling with alcoholism, but literally he kept coming, and then all of a sudden he's shining. He is coming. He's getting a job. He has a job. He's not drinking anymore, and he's being very more proactive into the group. So that's just an example of why we need to be able to meet people where they're at and be able to be vulnerable for them, so then they can be vulnerable for us, and they will come back. And I'm sure all of us who've had facilitate, you hear this. Thank you. You helped me, and I'm so happy for this. And you'll have people who might come, that go through that, and then you'll find them back there. But you don't treat them any different. But best believe, though, we do hold each other accountable, and I ask them to hold me accountable as well. because that's how iron sharpens iron and brother sharpens another brother, is that we keep each other on our toes. Sorry, I was long-winded.
No, take your time. These are great responses, and I appreciate all of them. Daryl, I'm going to turn to you next and ask, when you think about spaces in which you're facilitating support among peers, what you see as some of the challenges and opportunities in doing that. So things you've seen come up either that are things that make it more difficult, or things that are really special and promising about what you see happening in that group setting.
Well, in the years that I've been involved in this, one of the first things that I will admit is that I didn't experience the conversations around what sounds like gender warring as much years ago until more today. And I am clear there's shifting demographics, there's changes in employment with many of the fathers. There seems to be a greater fragmentation of the relationships. I'm seeing a rise in the number of parents who, in a way, are separated right at the beginning of the birth of the child. We didn't see that as much, let's say, 15 years ago. And there's a fragility in the connection between the father and the children. So that's a huge barrier. And especially when the father is telling us, I really want to be in contact with them more, but there's family members on the mom's side who doesn't want me to see the child. And so there's many situations that end up with the same result. They may not have the initial starting point. I know that what helped us years ago, and we're going to start picking that up now that we're able to see people face to face more, but we were doing day trips, we were doing social gatherings. So we were taking people to games, sports games with their children, and also out to eat right afterwards, giving them updates on other activities that were more days out with their children so that they could get to know them or have an experience with them. We have coming up a daddy-daughter dance that we're working with our local Milwaukee recreation facility, so that we're encouraging those fathers to have those relationships with the children, have a starting place where the memories are being formed. I know for a fact that when we have the youngest children with their fathers, we used to see people who were very uneasy with seeing that. And we would have those discussions in our groups. Why does it look like the fathers of the youngest children are expected to be incompetent? And in reality, not only that, but the ones who were doing quite well, and they knew the schedules of everything, immunization and feeding and changing, and when the child was going to have to enroll in school. Okay, now all of a sudden, those are extraordinary fathers. Those are fathers who are unbelievable fathers. And I'm thinking, okay, those fathers are what we should look at as involved fathers. So when we have our discussions and we're sharing information with those fathers who need help, we're meeting them at that place where they need to be helped, we also are giving them more or less a GPS system on, yes, this is where you also can be. Every father does not have to be involved at the same level, because it's the child who's going to let them know that they're doing a good job as a father or not. Every father is not going to be in the same type of relationship with the mother that the father next to him is going to be in. But that mother is going to be the one who says, this is a satisfactory relationship with the father. We're communicating with each other. This is what we need to be successful as parents, whether we are together or not. So we are organized around that concept. It's what the father needs and what that family needs in order to be successful that we're prioritizing. We're not trying to shape them into anything that we believe is an ideal version of a parent. And at the same time, we also want them to enjoy their time as a father too, because there's a limited amount of hours on the clock when they're going to be able to create those memories that we really want them to do. So that's a big priority. And the last thing that I'll say is we encourage them to check in with us and come back. And if they have information that they want to share with the other fathers who are coming behind them, they are welcome to do so, and we want them there as our partners.
Thank you. Josh, what do you see as some of the key challenges and opportunities when you're getting exchanged?
Let me. The only reason I'm laughing is because we have some, right? I think The biggest one, and this is my perspective, is that we do this work in silos, meaning fatherhood work is done amongst fathers, motherhood work is done amongst mothers. Where's the family work? Where is that work where both parties are coming to the table and saying, hey, this is what wronged me, and having that conversation from an asset base. I don't care about what happened if you're not giving me an asset outlook on what we can do to fix it. Right. So my nonprofit, Life Redefined, is all about asset parenting. That's all it is. So I don't care about the problems. Cool. They happened. It happened. You have trauma. You have harm. Let's talk about it. And I need an asset-based approach on how to get out of it. Otherwise, we're just crying to cry. If we're shedding tears without doing the work to be better, then we're just crying for no reason. Right. And practicing and having spaces to do this work. Right. So the number one is the silos. Number two, fatherhood programming has become a niche title where people are throwing money at it without real results. My first question to any fatherhood organization is, where's your data? If you don't have the results to show me you're making a difference, you're just here. And it's not to be hard, right? Not to be harsh, not to attack anybody, but what are you doing that's actively, effectively making a change? Yes, change is slow. Yes, change takes time, but you should still have the data to show. I can show you data on every man I've worked with and how it's made differences. Some now married the mother of their child. When they came to my program, they couldn't stand them. Some of them have had extra babies after being married because they became the doula in their situation. So what are the changes you've created, and how has it bettered our community? Those are my two issues out of like 12. I'm just going to leave you two. I'm going to be quiet because I can talk all day about this problem.
Yes. Well, you're speaking to my researcher's heart with the data point, but I also really love what you had to say about family and thinking about, what does it mean when we talk about fatherhood in a silo that's separate from mothers and children and from the whole family unit. Yeah. Ellen, Michael, how about you? So you probably have 12 or more as well, but we'll turn to you for at least a couple of challenges and opportunities that you might want to highlight for us.
Thank you. I actually would like to start with the opportunities, right? Because I think doing this work intentionally creates an opportunity for fathers to tell their story differently, right? I get to work with fathers through a peer-to-peer, in a peer-to-peer space where I don't have to just be the dad who goes to work and da-da-da. I'm the dad who sits on the couch and cries when our favorite person won on American Idol. Creating an opportunity for that to happen, especially in communities of color, hasn't happened in the past. We don't talk about sitting on the couch crying, watching This Is Us, which is personally one of my favorite shows. And my son gets a chance to see his dad show some emotion, right? This is an opportunity to do something different. Now, there are challenges, and so I'll do one of each. The other challenge is us being able to, and I'll just throw it out there, having the capacity to do what we're talking about, right? Because there is being money thrown at programs and organizations around fatherhood work to do the things that we've always done. There's a challenge for us to meet people where there's a challenge to talk about mental health, which even in some of our best programs, that part's not addressed and or funded, right? There's an opportunity that's tied to a challenge for us to include, like you said, Josh, mothers in fatherhood work. I work for families, and family includes dad, but it doesn't negate mom, right? The intentionality, we have an opportunity now to be intentional and unapologetic about including father in the family to improve the outcomes of kids, right? I'll stop there because I too, Josh, could go on.
Doc, you said a mouthful. I know it ain't my time to talk, but Doc, you said a mouthful.
Yeah. For that. Eugene, I'm wondering in the fatherhood groups that you're facilitating, maybe start with opportunities too. I like that we went there as well. What are some of the opportunities? Tell us about things you see going well in the work and, when you know that something is really kind of going right in a group that you're leading.
First of all, I got to say that we in church right now. This is church for fathers. Listen, You know, I know, Toby, you're guiding us, but I really feel like we're touching on some things that really need to be talked about. And I'm gonna use my minister voice right now, and that is like the three top things that I would say that I noticed when there are improvements. One, when I can see fathers that want to lead the group, they come after they've have done that cohort, and they continue to come back, and then I see them, you know, on their social media, or I see them in the community, and they're doing community stuff. So what I try to do in my group is I give them a piece of me, and I give them kind of like a I help them navigate through their situations. There's some fathers that want to be in the community, but just don't know how. I help them get them involved with that. I give them opportunities to do stuff like with some of the alders when they're having events, and we can plan these. We had an event last year called West Fest where we had a dunk tank, and it was called Dad, D-A-D, Dunk a Dad. So all my fathers in that group, they came, and it was cold. It wasn't nice and shiny, sunny and hot, but it was cold, and they came to get dunked, even myself. Um, so building that community, but also recognizing, like we just talked about, and I don't want to negate that, so I want to bring it back up. We're talking about mothers and fathers, right? Being able to give the credit to the mother, also hold the fathers accountable, and everybody comes. So the thing that I coined, and I call it parental equity. We need parental equity, and we need child equity. And if you really want to acronym, we're talking about that, and the acronym for that would be peace, right? We need peace among families and the children, right? Parent equity and child equity. That's what's important. And when we see what that looks like and understand that, we can see that encompasses a better relationship with the mother and the father, whether they're in a relationship or not, a better relationship with the child and father, a better relationship with the mother and father, a better relationship to communicate for that child, because that's what it's about, you know. And I like to say the child is only as perfect as a parent. So how do we give those tools to the parents that we're working with, fathers that we're working with, so they can understand that and navigate their situation, right? I think that's very, very important. Going back down to meeting where they're at, and then giving them tools from where they're at to be able to navigate their situation. We understand that when there's systems that are involved, you know, it can be harsh. And I tell them, you know, some people don't realize that when you're getting ordered to pay child support, and they say, I can't pay that amount, so then they don't pay. A lot of people don't understand that, okay, you can't pay that amount. As long as you pay something, they can't say that you're not paying. And fathers go, and even mothers go, like, really? That's all I got to do? Because they can't pay it. Now we're talking about, you know, the economic status of how it's going to be hard for a non-custodial parent to pay for child support while they have to pay bills, while they have to pay for insurance, all these other things. So to educate them and see the growth from that, giving them that information and those tools, that's what's rewarding to me. And that's how I feel like they grow from that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And thank you. And it's definitely also one thread through what everyone is saying too, is just hearing how interconnected the well-being of every parent, every child, the whole family, how interconnected that is. And then you're making a really important point too about thinking about the systems. I'm going to turn to Daryl and shift the question just a little bit. We were talking about kind of challenges and opportunities of working with groups of fathers. And here I want to ask you all to think, when you're working with a group that is a group of fathers that has something in common, something specific that they share. So maybe I'll come to you next, Josh, to talk about new parents, a dad doer fathering a baby. Daryl, I know that some of the groups that you've been involved with and that the Fatherhood Coalition supports, you know, are bringing together fathers who might have a shared identity or a shared experience or at a shared life stage, or, you know, something that really unites them. Can you tell us a little bit about the value in having those groups that are even more honed in than just bringing fathers together?
Right. So I do want to start off by saying while it's true that we work with fathers from different parts of the lifespan, the truth of the matter is one of the core elements is that we talk about the positive influence of fatherhood in regards to parenting in general. I mean, the mom and the dad are very likely to have different styles of parenting often, and that's not necessarily a negative. As a matter of fact, in concert, they build the child, they build the self-esteem, they also, once again, make some great memories, and that child thinks about the parents in an extremely positive manner and what's beneficial to their overall development. So a tremendous amount of effort is brought to those fathers who may not have been told that giving the child piggyback rides or, hugging a certain way and a little bit of roughhousing can go a long way toward creating a relationship with that child. And even when it's a parent who's an older parent, or perhaps they didn't start off doing those types of activities with the younger child, we still have a father who is key to developing the social and emotional well-being of that person. So that's where we want to work with them and be successful, that they have the characteristics of a person who believes that what they're sharing and what they're interacting with is going to do something that's going to benefit that child in the long run. Even if that child starts off as a teen, even if that child is almost a legal adult, when they finally begin bonding with them or finally begin interacting with them. There right now has never been a time when we've worked with fathers and grandfathers where we don't say that there's an opportunity where you can find yourself as a role model in their life. We want to build up on making sure that we can integrate our lessons and our activities from our curricula, but also introduce them to resources. If they need support with family services, mental health services, behavioral health, we want to make sure that they're building up those characteristics with those resources that are also going to be brought back to their family and make them whole again. So yeah, we're looking forward to working with fathers who come from anywhere, everywhere, even if they don't have a father as a role model in their own history.
So I'm going to turn to you, Josh, if you want to tell us a little bit about working with fathers, particularly around the moment of welcoming a new baby, what that looks like in that particular group setting.
I think to answer the question, I first have to answer it with why dad doula is a thing. So because of COVID, my wife pregnant, and during COVID, everything shut down. From hospitals to doctor's appointments, I was not allowed, couldn't do anything. And I grew very, very impatient because this is not just my wife's baby, but this is me having my wife and our child both at risk. And so for me, it got really irritating. And so I called my doula and my midwife and I started fussing. Didn't say too many cuss words because you can't cuss with women, they get mad. So all right, let me figure out my words before I call them. Fussing. And then they laughed at me and said, well, Josh, create. Boom. So that is the birth of Dad Doula. It is my pain. It is my sadness. It is my sorrow from an asset lens. This is how we fix it. The majority of our fathers are either first-time dads, so this is their very first child, second-time dads, meaning a second coming of fathers so they already have a child and are expecting a new one, or the absentee father, the father who has been gone or absent and is trying to regain a relationship in the child's lives. Those are the three demographics I work with for a specific reason. I was all three. My oldest child was 10. I didn't know she was my baby till she was 4. So there was a gap of space that I had to navigate to be able to reintegrate her into me and reintegrate myself into her. There was some atoning, there was some apologizing, a lot of hugs and tears, but all in all, it was the work that had to go into creating that space. And for my courses, I realized that not just leading with my story, but understanding the biggest thing about men expecting babies, they don't know what they don't know. And so my job is to help them navigate the quote unquote stupid questions that aren't stupid. They're questions they just don't know. I don't feel the baby kicking. I don't get nausea. Well, some of us do. I don't get all that other stuff. And so I don't know how to navigate a space that I'm not meant to navigate. Got it. So I had to first do the paradigm shift of changing the mind that you don't just belong here, you need to be here because she and this baby and that birthing person need you. So helping them navigate that. But yeah, I think at the end of everything, I've realized that two things. I've helped over 400 dads in 3 years. I've yet to lose a baby. I've yet to lose a mother. When I talk about data, right? I don't talk about data from we're going to have you check a box. No. I'm talking about data that I can touch, I can feel, I can see. I can tell you without a questionable doubt that a father's presence in the birthing process is either going to make or break that process. If he's present and intentionally present, he makes that process. He makes her feel protected. He does all the things, and he has to learn her again on a whole nother level, right? So what am I advocating for? What is our birth plan going to be? What is all this? What is all that? And having these conversations, right? So for our men, we're realizing that the demographics are anywhere from 18. I have a dad as old as 62. He's a granddad. So he's a grandfather supporting the birthing process. All in all, different demographics, all doing the work to just be better because they didn't have it or they just want to be better. One of the two.
Yeah. So I know that we could conversation go for hours, but I'm going to be mindful of time and turn to some of the questions that have come in from our audience. I also want to call everyone's attention. If you're not paying attention to the chat, it's popping. There's a lot going on there. A couple of folks have requested if you lead a program, if you have resources to offer, add them in the chat. And I see people doing that. So go ahead and add those, please, all of you. And we can also, when we send out the recording, share a list of the resources that get added in the chat. So for everyone attending, please feel free to share things that you think might be useful to others. I'm going to turn to Alan Michael with my first question that came in, which is about programs around the country. So we've highlighted in particular in our panel of 4, we've got 3 folks who lead really important fatherhood work happening in Wisconsin. What are you seeing? How widespread is the availability of peer support for dads? And what should people know about what's happening in terms of peer support nationally?
I'm happy to say that the fatherhood work is spreading, right? There are some challenges around sustainability and funding. So I'm happy to see, especially, and the acknowledgement of the peer-to-peer. I'll throw in that there has been a request nationally, though, to tie this work into some of the systemic inequities that accompany the voices of those in these groups, right? So it can't just be guys sitting in a group talking about life and parenting, whatever, accompanying those things like, Josh, if I ever have another child, which I won't, I'm calling you to be my doula, right? And or somebody to help me navigate child support and somebody to help me to navigate child welfare. So nationally, there's a call in this peer-to-peer fatherhood work to have systems work accompany, especially around inequities of fathers of color, partner with those of us who are running these programs. And so it's one of the things that Good Plus is looking to do, right? How do we connect these wonderful, awesome programs, but also to the systems that those participants are engaging in and running through challenges? I'm not sure, Tova, if that's what you asked, but that's what was going through my head.
Yeah, that was excellent and really helpful. I guess I want to turn, and it maybe connects to this. Some of the folks who asked questions and some folks who are attending the webinar said, we don't have anything like this near me, or I want to start something like this at my organization or in my community. So I want to kind of open it up to our panel to share any ideas you have. If somebody is in an area where they're not aware of any kind of father-to-father support kind of offerings, any tips you would have for somebody who really wants to get that going? And maybe Eugene, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so I think it would be, so you're asking the question, how would you start a fatherhood group?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a question that, you can start a group by bringing people together. if you want to start, you can come and be with me, and we can navigate that. I'm always looking to help others out on that. The way I started, it was just kind of a natural thing for me. Was again participant turned facilitator. So with me, I would speak with someone who was actually well versed in setting up a group to be able to navigate that. Um, like I said, I kind of got blessed in to this work,
Yeah.
and it's been rewarding. So that question, I'm not going to say I have an answer to everything, and I would just say
Yeah.
that just connect with organizations that are doing work already, and then learn, get educated, and you're going to bring something to the table. Everyone has something to bring to the table, and you just got to network to see what that something is.
I do want to
Yeah.
say, I
Shane,
do
your
want
answer
to,
actually, oh, sorry, go ahead, Daryl.
no, I was going to say, I do want to say that you have the opportunity to contact the National Fatherhood Initiative as well as the Men's Health Network. They're both located in Washington, D.C. And the benefit of getting in touch with both of them is that they may have in their database somewhere in your state where a fatherhood program has either started or where the curricula is being used, let's say in a parenting class. From what I've seen, there is something in every state, but I know that connecting is extremely difficult, especially because there's barriers when there's no funding. So I do encourage people, use those resources. National Fatherhood Initiative, go to their website. The National Men's Health Network, again, both located in Washington, D.C., go to their website. You'll find their information. You'll find resources for fatherhood. And frankly, if we go back 18 years, that's exactly what I had to do also. Prior to us having anything in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I talked to the people in Washington, D.C., and eventually met them, and that was extremely helpful.
Thank you. I was going to say, Eugene, that you're just underscored how it can become sustaining, though. So you don't know necessarily how to start it because you came into something, but it's such a great example of how you experienced that group. It was meaningful in your life, and now here you are facilitating the group. So for people who are thinking, we don't have this in my community, if you're the one to get it started, that might be a ball that keeps rolling as you get people involved. We are coming up close to the hour, and I'm going to ask Natea if we can go just a couple of minutes past the hour. And I want to invite each panelist. We're going to kind of wrap up here to kind of share any final thought you might like to on this topic. So we'll just give you each, a moment. This is going to be a short one, but anything you think we haven't hit on or that you want to underscore as a takeaway for our audience. And Alan Michael, let's start with your final thoughts as we close out.
Sure. Those who I've worked with, right, I've just coined two words: intentionality and being unapologetic, right? That is required in this work. The other thing that I would say is, as you're navigating programming and looking to start program, find somebody that this is their passion. Because if it's not your passion, because of those roadblocks, those barriers, those challenges, it's going to be challenging. So you got to find somebody, and it doesn't have to be an expert with letters in front or behind their name. Find somebody who's passionate about this work, and you'll end up with a program like Eugene talked about, right? You'll end up with a program that Josh talked about. Those are my parting words.
Awesome. Thank you. Eugene, would you like to share any closing thoughts as we wrap up?
So because of, me being, I've gone through every aspect of the fatherhood struggle, from relationships with the children, relationships with the mother, relationships with the court systems, like that be, all the way to the whole family court, what do they call it? What do you call it? I'm so sorry. I'm drawing a blank. But the investigation of family court, right? When you have these collateral investigations where you're fighting for your rights to have with your children, That's why I speak about peace. That's why I speak about parent equity and child equity, because when you go to that lens, then we're truly looking at what's important for that child. What is the best interest? And the best interest, as we know, as data talks and speaks for itself, is that both parents, it's best for the child to have both parents in there. So we need to have more push on a legislation level so that we can actually build together. And I think that would stop the segregation of men and women, mother and father, so that we all are human beings and we can all change the narrative that has been pushed on us in society for way too long. And that narrative is wrong, right? And so if we have people, organizations, individuals, groups, systems that can actually help change that narrative, we will be doing a lot of justice for our society, and we wouldn't have so many youth running around not understanding who they are, where they come from, and they're trying to find a place where they can have recognition. And that starts in the home, community, the world.
Thank you. I want to respond to one thing very quickly that's come up in the chat multiple times with people asking if they'll have access to the chat. Along with the recording, we'll share all the resources that are coming up in the chat, so you will have that as well sent out to you. The resources will get sent out. Daryl, I'm going to invite you to share a closing thought and then turn to you, Josh, and then we got to wrap up. So Daryl, you're up.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tova. Thank you, everyone on the panel. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this session. I want to have everyone remember, let's be encouraging. Let's be consistent when we're working with our fathers. Many of the fathers may not be confident in their effort, but they want to be involved. And that's the reason why it's so important to have trained staff and individuals who are not only consistent and encouraging, but also enthusiastic about understanding the benefits of fatherhood in its relationship with the child. The father is not going to do anything that we want as far as what they've learned unless we are being encouraging and they get the opportunity to put those things in place. Something else I want to say before I sign out. Ladies and gentlemen who are part of this, please remember, you don't have to have an individual fatherhood program that is specifically fathers only, father activities only, father program only. Perhaps it's an opportunity for you to create activities and lesson plans and resources that emphasize the father's parenting style. Maybe that's something where you can include the fathers in the work with the moms, but definitely it's got to take a little bit of extra effort to make sure that you're prioritizing what fatherhood is. And I know that we'll make some progress here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I see a call for more sessions like this, so we will keep them coming. We're going to give Josh a chance to share a final word, and then we're going to wrap up. And thank you all so much.
Final words. Okay, two things. And I'm not going to volunteer the panel, right? That's not my job. I won't do that. I will say this: we are available to do this work. So please, if it's a conversation, if it's a lunch chat, if it's whatever it needs to be to support whatever fatherhood you have going on, I'm available. I bother Daryl all the time. We do this, right? Mm-hmm. That's why I'm laughing. I bother Daryl all the time. So understand, we do this. Mm-hmm. So please tap in. This is not a siloed job. You have to tap into other people who are doing the work so that we can finally start to see growth in family affairs, family education, family growth. This is a thing. I think second off, the other thing I'm gonna leave you with is if you're scared trying to do it scared. That means you're in the right area. If you are scared trying to do it scared. Because if you are not scared doing it, you haven't found the thing you should be doing. Do it scared. And with that, I'm complete.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks so much to Dr. Tova Walsh and Mr. Daryl Davidson, Dr. Alan Michael Graves, Eugene Chrysler, and Joshua Zawadi for sharing your time, your experience, and your insight with us today. As we mentioned before, we'll be posting the slides and the recording of the webinar within a day or so. I also saw a lot of people asking for contact information, so I don't know if that would be okay if all the panelists wanted us to share the contact information with the registrants as well. So thank you all for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.